Welcome to all brothers and sisters. Thank you for being here. We'll move to question and answers. Some amazing points discussed today.
This was a very challenging presentation. I had a number of discussions with Brother Asif Jaleel as well as Brother Muhammad Ali and also with Harun, and tried to, because what appeared was that though in the verse the reference is to Wahi, but it was at the back of my mind that there is Ruh within us as well, and divine energy has to be linked. So I've tried to put it together. I don't know if you agree or not, but there is a lot to reflect.
I think without a doubt, every bit of it. Sure. Right, sir. We will go to Wasim Bhai. Wasim Bhai, welcome.
Yes, assalamu alaikum to everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. It was really, I appreciate your tackling the topics, and it's really difficult topics actually, but beautifully done. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
But there are, just to structure this few ayats, the first one is we're talking about the blessing of Allah on human being, that how these blessings we should be recognizing, and when something goes wrong and then we start to complain. That is one aspect which I will come back. I have a question on that. And then a big topic of Ruh, which was also, I think we'll have quite a good sort of discussion. And obviously after that is the Rahmat and Fazl of Rububiyat is one of the major aspects you have touched upon. Now coming to this, see the very first one, I don't want to go into the details of what is Nema mean and Insan and Yas. That itself, I think most of our colleagues knows that. But I would like to go into this Shakala, one aspect of it. Now, correct me if I have not understood properly. Shakala, one aspect could be that human potentials which Allah has given as a human being, that potentials, they do have their limits. So that could be termed as Shakila, that human being can stand on one leg but cannot stand on, or cannot lift both the legs up, won't stand. So that's a Shakila which is built in. The other Shakila is self-imposed chains. Now these self-imposed chains could be of two types. Number one, if we take it in terms of potential, see, as a human being, we do have certain potential given to us, and we don't utilize that potential fully. Will that be considered as a Shakila? That we don't intend to develop to that extent. So that could be Shakila. And the third aspect of Shakila which comes to my mind is the self-imposed limitation, but in terms of traditions and superstitions, that which goes into the wrong directions, that can be termed as a Shakila as well. So these are very subtle differences between them, but I would appreciate a sort of discussion on this aspect, if possible. That's for the time being my question is. I do have another one which will come later on the Ruh.
Okay, no, thank you very much. The way I have understood is that everything which constrains us, that is, despite possessing the abilities or known abilities, and despite possessing the resources, if we do not make use of that, whether knowingly or unknowingly, we are creating a particular disposition for us in which we are satisfied. And that is what essentially Jahim is, that we become static, we suffer from inertia, whether that is physical or which is intellectual or both. And that is the way I have understood, at least, that we have certain limitations because of the system around us. And what Quran is saying is that do not, satisfy yourself and be contented with the limitations which are presented by the man-made system to you. Because, for example, if one is poor, then his shakla is that he will remain poor and he can't get out of it. His needs will not be met. His children will also stay poor unless some induction takes place from outside. But there are situations where some of the poor can also get out of that trouble by getting rid of some of their own limitations and then see that whether they can grow out of it or not. And what Quran is all along saying, and that is why it is putting so much onus on Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, that because Allah is not going to send Wahi to everyone, and we already have Wahi, so no more messenger is coming. So the whole issue is that we got this Wahi, which is a highly developed message or what do you call instruction, which has come from Allah, the fully developed self, we can say, for our own understanding, though it is not possible to say like that even. But unless we come to that, we can't even point out to ourselves that what are our limitations, how much length of that rope is around our feet tied by the system itself. And we can now see it in retrospect, in hindsight, that where we were in the past. And we would have been still going around in circles in those ritualized practices and would have satisfied ourselves that we are doing okay and there is a paradise waiting for us in the hereafter. So that is the way I look at it. Amjad is here, Wasim, just because he has to go for a meeting and we can ask him what was his question or comment.
No, I don't have Assalamu alaikum, I don't have another meeting. I think my question was when you show that picture about slum, and when you look at the condition and the restriction and all these chains that are imposed on a lot of these people, self-development is very difficult to imagine, if you're in that position. So how does the Quran view this? How does the Quran view those individuals, a child that's born in that poverty, who doesn't have, the light of the Quran? Surely there is exceptions to those circumstances. Is that right, or have I misunderstood something?
No, your point is very valid. That how does the Quran view it? Quran views it as yatim and miskeen, and it addresses us, that is those who have come to the Quran with a view to understand the system of deen and are dissatisfied with the world around them, that is the man-made system. It is not only asking us that why these people are in that condition, it is also asking us to understand them or take them as equal human beings who are in that state because of the wrong system, because there is no Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen in the world. And it is also saying that I am tolerating it, that is Allah himself is tolerating it and waiting for Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen to rise up, come together, rise up and establish the system which can point out the problems of these people. And I'll give you a very interesting example. Sometimes back, I was unemployed for a few months, and because of my own background, I looked for jobs under the World Bank. And I came across some of the literature on poverty elimination, and I'm talking of late 90s, and it's about now 30 years ago. Late 90s, about 20 to 25 years ago. And I was surprised that all those papers were in detail and had given all types of steps which can be taken to remove poverty. And one of the things which I noticed under World Bank was that all those executives and even lower paid jobs were extremely well paid. And And I looked at it and I said, these guys cannot remove poverty, who themselves are extremely rich in these positions. And the word is in front of us, and we can see that poverty still remains the same. In fact, is multiplying, because as the population keeps increasing. So these are very potent signs for us as students of the Quran, not to put any optimism on man-made system that somehow it will solve the problem. So the motivation which we should have is that since this system has to come and evolve out of the hands of Jamaat-e-Momineen, hence it is our responsibility that since we have come to this path, we do not give up. We continue and try to understand it. So those slums is not the responsibility of Allah, that is the responsibility of Jamaat-e-Momineen. And the original purpose of creation of man and giving him ruh, giving the Quran as ruh, so that the two ruhs should come together, get Allah's help, and get onto job and ensure that there are no slums in the world. I hope that makes sense.
That's it. And one last question.
Yes, please.
When Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam were giving message, the people that were willing to listen or come to this path were the people that were a lower class or people that were suffering poverty. It was the rich people that were, showing arrogance, but weren't very willing to come to this path. So my question is, shouldn't we be targeting those areas, people who are, in those economically not well off? We should be targeting those people because they will be willing to listen, will pay more attention, or willing to come to this path. I'm sorry, it's just one question
Yes,
after
no,
the
this is something which has been in my mind as well. But if we look at those verses, Quran hasn't said that there were no rich people or people of influence there. But since he was living among them in that small town or village or city, whatever it was, and these poor people, they responded to him. And remember, at that time, life was fairly simple. It was not as complicated as of today. And over there, the Wahi which used to come to these messengers was not very detailed like the Quran. Quran is now dealing with a very highly developed side of human psyche as well, because human mind, intellect has developed, and our rational thinking has developed in today's world. And world has become massive. There are 8 billion plus now rules on Earth. So both are really, in terms of physical comparison, they are not the same. And secondly, if we go and give a message to poor, and poor will accept it, they will say, okay, what is next? And they are of no use to creating that central team for the system of Deen, because their intellect is not that developed. They are not very well educated people. So through this platform, what we are even over here, we are trying to come to grips with the highly developed side of the system of Deen. And every time we go into it, we find something new for human psyche. So those people will follow. So we should assume from the Quran that these poor people will follow once the economic system is in place, and they will realize that these people who are in the system of Deen are not talking about us. They are not talking about getting their votes to get elected, because in the system of Deen, nobody gets elected. We select ourselves for this job using the Quranic criteria. So these are totally different, way of approaching the problem. Hope that makes sense.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's just something that was.
Oh, that's a very good point. In fact, because it came to my mind as well when I was going through these verses on Messenger Nuh, that these poor people were more inclined to come to the Quran, because Quran talks about yatim and miskeen, and they are yatim and miskeen, and they want their problems to be resolved, and they at least see some hope from someone who is talking about the Quran and talking about their problems.
Exactly what you just said. They will see hope because this will enlighten them, because the Quran addresses their issues. If you know what I'm trying to say.
No, I agree.
People that are comfortable, then there's another question about that. But people who are in need, they will see this, a light, a way out of the misery they're facing.
I agree. And even you can try that as well. I have done that some of the people who are not economically well off and supported them and still supporting them. But once you tell them about the Quran and the system of Deen, others, they give you a blank look because for them it is meaningless. They are in such a low condition that they are living at a subhuman conditions that their intellect doesn't grasp it.
No.
And then I gave up because unless we solve their economic problems within the system of Deen, these handouts do not solve their problem. They're still worried about their next roti and next day and next year, and their children are in need. So what do we do? So these are very practical problems which all of us face. So charity is not an answer, but that does not mean we should stop supporting them. We should help wherever is possible within our relations, within our friends, within people around us.
And I agree, charity is not an answer. And Salim Bhai gave a really wonderful presentation on that.
That's right.
But what we could do is give them means so they can stand up on their feet, whilst also try to relate this message. I think combining the two will work. That could be a formula to move forward.
But they have a limitations as well. Remember, for example, in a religious society in Pakistan, if you ask them to come to Tolu Islam and they are living in a very backward area where there is an influence of mullah and somebody hears about Tolu Islam and Parvez, they will make their life hell.
No, I agree. So I don't know how Parvez have faced, the mullahs and the opposition. To be honest with you, I have no idea. It must have been really difficult.
Now, there was a fatwa of 1,000 ulamas or scholars in Pakistan who declared him kafir without giving him a chance to explain his side.
No, and this is it. If you want to call somebody, you give at least, say, okay, what is it wrong that he's saying? Give at least something from. They can't. It's just emotion. Very last thing is, this morning I went to get puri chane, for a breakfast, and I met a couple of guys who were lining up, and they were talking about, we started talking about religion when I started saying, look at it from the system point of view. Look at the misery. Because we don't have a system, how people in Gaza are being abused, and there's nobody standing up to these oppressive forces. I think people have now begun to understand the practicality side of the Islam. There's a religion and there's but I think if you relate that message, we can't just say to them, drop your religion thing. It's not going to work. But when you get a chance and you try to show them the practical side, that this will bring the results, not what you are doing just by doing a couple of rituals and thinking my duty is over, that's not going to change anything. But when you related that, by explaining them, it's the system that can move these, move these problems and issues. They then get it. I think people beginning to realize the Molvi's aspect, and it's going to take time, but I can see a light at the end of the tunnel.
No, I agree. Presently, the life, this Gaza-Palestinian issue has really awakened the conscience of the world.
Yeah. And the hypocrisy of the Westerns and these governments, and whichever government, whether Saudis or
I think biggest hypocrisy is of the Muslims, isn't it?
Exactly. People have realized the two face of this government. Anyway. That's me done. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. That was nice.
There's one related question regarding this, might be Dr. Saab. See, that issue of inviting the poor and other things, that itself is a huge subject, and I believe we have discussed quite a lot on that. However, this aspect, as you remember, even at the start, you were mentioning the banking system, the economic system. Is it some sort of shackle we have?
Yes.
So if you can elaborate a little bit, I
Yes,
believe
I'll
that
go
will
back
remind
to Sohaib's question was regarding the banking. There was a clip which he shared on Islamic Dance Society's forum, where a guy in Canada is saying that Islamic banking is being introduced or is likely to be introduced in Canada, and the Canadian people are quite apprehensive. But actually it is for their benefit as well. And exactly, he was not saying what shape it will have, whether it will have no interest, and simply they cannot do away with interest, because what are they going to do with inflation then? These kind of things we hear in Pakistan as well. Nowadays, there are banks who have two separate branches. One is an Islamic branch, and there is a non-Islamic branch or a business branch. And they do ask you what sort of an account you want to open. These are all self-deceptions. There is no truth in that. We have seen that at a very basic level, we should understand that human self develops by giving. There is not a single verse in the Quran which says accumulate, gather. But that does not mean that the Quran is asking us to give away everything the first day the system is established. Not at all. Quran wants us to go, because it is a deen based on rational thinking and reasoning. It is appealing to human mind, human intellect. It does not want us to accept anything without reason, without any opposition from our heart and mind. Because the moment there is a reservation within my mind that why should I give this money away, or I'm going to be poor after giving away, Quran says pause and reflect, and then wait, and then go take the next step when you are comfortable with that. And this is very important for us on this platform to understand, that human self limits itself when it is totally consumed by the material needs. It wants us to be free from the worry of material needs. What will happen to my children? What will happen to my next meal? What will happen to my job? All that uncertainties. But of course, these can only be removed through a system. So there is no sticky plaster arrangement within Deen. So when somebody says this is Islamic banking, this is sticky plaster arrangement just to satisfy themselves without changing their self. So this all banking system, which is prevalent within the capitalist system, it will take a totally different form under the system of Deen. But that is something for us to think through it. At this stage, we should understand that these are all gimmicks, all these kinds of videos and others. These people who are narrating these, either they are looking for numbers just to get some money from YouTube, a monetary benefit, or they are very ignorant and they do not understand the Quran at all. So within the capitalist system, there cannot be any part of the capitalist system which is Islamic unless a system of Deen, a government comes into shape in a piece of land which is based on the pure Quranic minds who have accepted Iman, and they are absolutely those Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen which are defined by the Quran and verified by all the criteria laid down in the Quran. And we have now seen some glimpses of that Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. They are not ordinary human beings. They are born ordinary, but they have become special by using the value system given in the Quran and willingly. Absolutely no ikrah. If there is any ikrah, there is any reservation within their heart and mind, then they are not mu'min, period. And they have to reject the man-made system first. If we are trying to make some adjustments within the man-made system and think Islam will come like that, the Islam of the Quran, then I'm afraid we haven't understood the Quran. So that is the way we need to look at it. So Heb, I hope that makes sense, but ask me a question if you want.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think so from what you're saying then, it's a case of this system, no matter how you try and change it or weave it, it is still based on a man-made system which cannot benefit everyone.
No.
And so it will at some point in some way destruct itself. And so to get away from that, you will need a completely new system.
Exactly. I'll give you another example. You know, for example, if somebody is suffering seriously and they have to, I'll give you my own example. I had gastric ulcer, I think. And for that, we need triple treatment. And triple treatment means you use 3 antibiotics together to get rid of that bacteria. And if I do not use those triple treatment the way I was recommended to take, I think you have to take it over 5 or 10 days. And during that, you know, obviously your stomach is in a terrible shape with 3 antibiotics going together. But you have to insist on that. And then at the end of that, that ulcer disappears. And it disappeared in my case. Had I not taken that triple treatment, and I had only taken the double treatment, I would have been still left with some remnants of that ulcer, which would have come back. You get my point? So these are examples right from our own life as well in the physical world, that we have to follow the recipe or a formula completely the way it is. And Quran, now you have seen it, that it is a ruh from Allah. It is a complete guidance from a developed personality, fully developed personality, for as a feed, as a nutrient for ourselves. It looks very interesting, but it is a fact. And unless we feed our own self with this complete treatment, our self cannot be ready for the system of Deen. It cannot even understand the system of Deen, never mind implementing it. Implementing comes far later. First, we have to understand the design and planning side of it.
Yes.
So this is the way we have to concentrate on it. And we should not give up till the time we have come to grasp with this issue. Because this half-hearted attempt is not like becoming a doctor. You cannot become a doctor half-hearted, that sometimes you can treat the patient okay and sometimes you cannot, and you might even kill him by giving wrong medicine or treatment. So you have to meet the minimum threshold level of being a doctor and then becoming a consultant. So Momin is actually a consultant on behalf of Allah, who is going to establish this system over here. So we should never be distracted by these gimmicks of Islamic system here and Islamic namaz here or Islamic hajj over there or Islamic zakat. And, you know, that is why these charities and getting distracted by that will be taking us away from the focus of the system of Deen. And that is why it took 23 years for the messenger to go through this rigmarole, this harsh environment of opposition, and all these thoughts. They were human beings like us. They also got these thoughts in their mind as well. Some of them must have left as well. Some new people had joined in, and they consistently followed it till the time the system got established. And the moment they relaxed, see what happened. Malukiyat came back, dictatorship came back, because they left the formula. And the moment formula weakens, then gradually the system collapses. It doesn't collapse in one day. We have seen that the West is now declining, and we have seen it over in the last, at least since the time they have brought in COVID-19 to destroy themselves. It is the 4th year going. So it will probably be another few years before that we see the tangible signs of their decline.
Yeah, very scary times ahead. But I wanted to ask one thing. So in that video that I sent as well, he did, and it is mentioned in Quran, is this idea of usury. Okay, so the idea and the concept by which they're trying to pull people in as well, you will only get back what you put in, and you will be owed what you put out, and there is going to be no interest. And so that's why there is this kind of idea that, yeah, this is Islamic. But what I'm trying to understand is, okay, what is that alternative financial system that, if it, maybe it's not the right time to talk about it, but it is something that we have to think about at some point. But when we do, or when we do think about how we try and trade and work towards, you know, our sustenance on this earth, what are we going to do to provide some type of economic stability? What is that method? If it isn't banking, what is it?
No,
And that's
banking
what I'm
can,
thinking about.
I've given it some thought. Banking can stay because you have to, because it's a very convenient system instead of barter system to carry out exchange of goods through a medium of money. But it must not have inflation, number one, because inflation comes through this deficit budgeting and increasing the prices. And it benefits always. It is a sort of a tax on poor people, because again, money goes to the rich. And this is actually a stealth tax, number one. Number two, the surplus wealth causes the problem. There should be no surplus wealth with anyone willingly. They should understand that why surplus wealth will always create cognitive issues, because human beings then look for material benefits and they get some satisfaction to satisfy their greed. And that greed can be taken away through education and training, and tell them through the self. Unless we bring in self, nafs into it, we simply cannot bring the system of deen in place. And it is amazing that how these people in the earlier era understood these things, at least people who were running the affairs of the state. So if we concentrate on that, you will see the answer will emerge immediately. Because what is the purpose, higher purpose of you and me and every one of us on this platform, at least theoretically? Our purpose is that we should spend a good life here, free from fear and huzn, free from the fear of death and accountability, because we are holding ourselves accountable as we are going along. So we exactly know what we are at this point in time using the Quranic criteria. And then enter into the life of the hereafter with that developed self, whether the system of deen is established or not, but working for the system of deen all the time. So we are focused. If we are focused all the time on the system of deen, or our efforts are with that in mind, then essentially we are focused on what the Quran is saying. And then we bring ourselves within the permanent values of the Quran, which are actually laws dealing with our self-development. And those things which we can follow even within the constraints of the man-made system, we must follow them. For example, not telling lies, not doing wrong, forbidding evil wherever we can. Of course, looking at the consequences as well, because sometimes it can be tedious, it can be difficult. And promoting good, and at the same time understanding the Quran and telling people that, look, if you're dissatisfied with this system, please read this book, What is Islam, as well. Or if you want to look at the life at the level of human self, then here it is some ideas, you can think through it. So these are the kind of things which we can be creative and think about it. And not to annoy people. If people are annoyed, then there is no need to annoy them, and let them live their life. If they're comfortable the way their life is, let them, because a lot of beneficiaries of man-made system are quite happy the way world is. So this is for our own training. We have to be creative even in our thoughts. And it's a challenging job. It is not one day's job. It is a job which we have taken over for the rest of our life. But keeping in mind that those slums will stay like that, yatim and miskin and poor will stay like that, unless we make an effort. So at least we should leave this world while making effort. So and seem to be making effort for ourselves as well, and continuously questioning what is going on in the world and how the law of requital is working. So these are some of the things and thoughts which cross my mind, and we should share all those thoughts. If some different thoughts come to your mind, any doubts arise, any suspicions arise, any uncertainty arise, or hopelessness comes to our mind, feel free to share them here. Thank you. Amjad Bhai, I think, wants to come back.
Yeah, just talking about Islamic Bank, I think that's completely a joke. If Islamic Bank saying they don't deal with interest, I tell you one thing, all of the banks will go out of business. What they're doing is they're just changing the name of interest maybe to rent. It's the same thing. You're paying it over so many years. So these kind of, they call it Islamic, but it's just a joke. That's just what I'm pointing one thing out. And secondly, I think Islam economic system is very simple. The way banking system will work, or Baitul Mal, is just to make sure the wealth continues to flow to fulfill everybody's needs. Simple. You know what I mean?
I agree. Absolutely, I agree.
There is nothing. So all we have to make sure, like water is flowing, there is no obstacle, and let it keep flowing. So everybody's thirst is fulfilled. That's how I understood what the message is. And what the bank needs to do is just a simple economic system, and making sure this is done at national level and at the international level.
I like that. It's a very creative thought. Let the wealth be flow. I like
exactly.
it.
Exactly.
There is a verse.
We're only holding. We're only holding wealth now because we don't know. Because there is no flow. So we just looking after each other. We're living in a non-Islamic system. A system that will not let this the wealth flow. And as soon as this system comes in, there's no need for me to have two houses. There's no need for me to save more than I need, because the water is flowing. I'll just go there and grab what I need. And it's simple as that. Right. Sorry. That's me. My simple thought.
No, there is a verse on that as well. I will see if I could. I think it is in Surah 47, 48, around that. There is a verse which says, Quran, that don't let the wealth stay in few hands and let it flow. And just like blood through our body, if we make our body restricted in some area, then that limb will become ineffective. Now, going back to the first point, which is very good, I should have pointed out myself as well, which Brother Amjad raised, Sohaib, is that it's a very simple way to calculate whether banks can charge interest or not. Banks have certain amount of money, and they have a lot of employees. They have banking branches, and all of them need, the people have to be paid. And then they also have some kind of a profit for their, board of directors and others. So all that, from where that is going to come, in case whatever money is coming to them and they are dishing out to people and asking them not to pay any interest. And what will happen to inflation? Because, for example, there is a 5% or 10% inflation in virtually in every country. It is at this point in time is about 3% to about 20 or 30%. In poor countries, even 50%. So if they do not cater for that inflation, then that means at the end of the year, the money they have is already devalued. So how are they going to compensate for that? So banks will go bankrupt. They cannot run the bank. Bank must make some kind of a profit and enough to pay their staff as well, employees. So these are very basic things with which we can, reject these Islamic banking type of trickeries which these guys float. By some other means, they will try to come back and get money out of your hands. And essentially, if you look at it, as Brother Amjad said, that they do get money back from other means.
Yeah.
So it is not possible, simply not possible under the capitalist system.
Please, Wasim bhai. Yes.
Thank you very much for reminding me. It was. See that other aspect, this is a second aspect of the questions, or rather even the presentation. The word ruh, you have explained it beautifully, and there are different connotations the way Quran has said that ruh and wahi. To this word, which is ruh, and its alternative in different languages and different cultures and other aspects. I'm just going to utter some of the names, some of them, not all of them, that ruh, but they are all separate, and some of the time they are taken as similar to each other or synonymous. They are used like ruh in Arabic or Urdu even. Atma in Hindi. In English, we use this word soul, and some of the time the word self is also used. In Arabic, there's a word called nafs as well, which can be synonymously, I know the difference between them, but nafs is also a synonymous. Self is one word. Jan in Urdu is also called the Jan, the Ruh. Khudi is also referred sometime. Spirit in English is also used. Breath of life or life, life as life itself is also referred as something which have more than when you are dead and when you're alive. The difference is the ruh. And then the two words I and in inverted comma, I is also used, and me. There are other words like consciousness you have already used, that is also synonymous used. Personality is another aspect, and hasti in Persian, hast, that existence, that is also. Now these are different words in different cultures and languages which are used. Now Quran has, and specifically in your presentation, there are different explanation which is given, which specifically define what is ruh. I would like you to elaborate on the same lines which you have already done, the difference between ruh and wahi. I know that you have said that it's the same root and the way it is. So if you can add on that, that's my only comment. So just to start up a discussion on ruh.
The way I looked at it, and it's a very good question, and I think others can. I'll ask Brother Asif Jalil as well to comment on that, and Brother Salim, is he around? Yes, he can also maybe comment. The way I look at it is very, very simple and straightforward, relating to my own self. What I'm sitting here is an I, or a nafs, right? And I have got a consciousness, and all of us are now aware of this, what kind of a consciousness I have. We have shared this presentation, we went through this question answer session, and all of us are more or less on the same grid level. So this ruh, which has given me an I, and I is changelessness. It is a changelessness in a continuously changing environment. For example, my sense of identity is still the same, which I had even as a 10 years old, that I exist. And whatever name I had, it doesn't make any difference, ABC, whatever name is. So I does not change as we live our life. Our thoughts do not grow old. We still feel as young as we used to be. So this I is a function or a byproduct of that divine energy given to me, number one. My choice and intent does not change with the period with aging. My choice and intent exactly remains the same. That thought of making choices at any point in time does not change. So these both are manifestation of my ruh, the divine energy given to me. And I understand that this is the state with every human being. Whether this thing comes out of our intellect or brain or nervous system, that is not an issue. Issue is that what is being manifested in the practical outer world, the way we are thinking. Now, the way I understand the ruh in relation to wahi is that the ruh is that divine energy which is used as a medium for the projection of wahi to the messenger. So that ruh was at that time. Now that has become a wahi as the Quran. Because one of the things which I did not touch, because it's a very sensitive subject, and I did not, but over here in question and answer, I can share my understanding at this point in time. It will change probably with passage of time as well as we accrue more knowledge. But this time, this will surprise to all of us that how Wahi was given to the messenger. There are few aspects which we can relate to human memory. Quran says that this Wahi comes to your heart through Ruhul Amin. So medium is Ruhul Amin, which is absolutely, whose fidelity, whose honesty, whose being trustworthy and not being contaminated is absolute. And how do we prove that? By reverse, should I say reverse engineering, by looking at the Quran and the message itself. Now, this was going into the mind and heart of Rasulullah. When Quran says mind and heart, means both intellect and emotions. And it was going right into his memory directly from Allah. And it was being made sure that it becomes part of the memory so that the messenger does not forget. And this is very important for all of us to understand. If even at our level, because procedure which we adopt to acquire this Wahi and its guidance is opposite of Rasulullah. Rasulullah's eye was not affected. His choice and intent was not affected. His consciousness had the ability to absorb what was being passed on to him. So his eye was not affected. His choice and intent was not affected. He was all the way fully aware and convinced that what is being assigned to his memory, which he knew is in the memory because he remembered it. He remembered all the verses, is exactly what he needs to live this life. Because he had acquired a new self, a new life, like I assume all of us have acquired. Do you understand? So Rasulullah, does it make sense?
Yes, to a certain extent it does.
Let me expand
Yeah.
it. So in our case, the way I understand is that the Ruh is the medium in the case of the Quran through which Wahi is passed on to us. And that Wahi is now saved in the Quran as a complete entity, as a complete guidance, which is the requirement of a raw self. That self, which is also the product of Ruh. You know, remember that from Ruh, then we became you. And by virtue of that divine energy, which stays with us and is indestructible, and we will carry that. But what we have done is we have developed it through the fully developed Wahi and increased its consciousness level for the system of Deen and all those things which we talk. So this is the way I look at it, unless somebody else wants to add something.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry, I was just going to say in that book, Iblis and Man, it does talk about that, and it does also talk about that Allah chose these individuals in particular because of their character.
So using the same analogy, Sahib, then we have also made ourselves over there. Allah chose them and gave them. Over here now we have made a choice to be chosen for this job through our own choice. And whereas the messenger had no choice, I'll not say no choice, they had a choice to give up. For example, in the case of Hazrat Yunus, he did move away from his people and thought he has come to the end of it. But in our case is that choice stays with us. And what we have done is that we have voluntarily volunteered ourselves for this job, that we are willing to be part of that Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, which can carry out those tasks which Allah wants us to carry out. And for that, we seek the help of his laws, and we also seek his help because he is present everywhere. So if that gives us increased satisfaction, that is fine. So this is the way I look at it.
No, there's one aspect to it which makes it much more clearer, that the Ruh belongs to that domain of Amr, not the Khalaq. So we cannot comprehend 100% the way we understand the Khalaq things. those physical and other things which are in the human domain or paradigm, we can understand that. But because the Ruh belongs to that sphere of Amar,
Yes.
Which we are not, so that is one aspect, I think.
Now that's very good. That's very good. Thanks for that. I agree that is the domain of Amar, and that is why we don't understand, but we can see its manifestation in the domain of Khalq.
Yeah.
And our relationship is with the Quran. Actually, these discussions are useful in some ways, because if we conceptualize something logically, because human beings like to follow their path, once they become extremely rational, they want to follow it rationally. And if we can somehow satisfy ourselves that what we are doing in the light of the Quran.
Yeah, Doctor, one aspect which I wanted to actually, the way this question was posed, and that these are this term, Ruh, and as I have uttered a number of other things, phenomena, they are present in all the cultures and all the other religions, somehow, some way, some form or shape. But it will be interesting to see what the other religion, I'm not going to state here, but it will be interesting to see that how all the cultures have defined those things and how the Quran has defined. And that start to make sense, because to me it makes much more clearer understanding of what the Ruh is, as compared to, it's not 100% clear concept, but if you take it from Hinduism or Buddhism or other religion, which goes into circle and circle, eventually you come up, this does make sense, and that's my conclusion. I won't go anything more
No,
than that.
that is fine. I have paid some attention to spirit as well, and soul.
Yeah.
Soul is a different concept, because soul is merely the life. They say that we have life, and once we die, soul escapes. But that soul is a different concept under religion, where it is accountability doesn't come into it, and the development concept doesn't come into it. Spirit is the one which is a lot related to meditation as well. And I have looked at it, that why do people do meditation, and what kind of a self or thinking they develop. And if we look at it, it is all self-interest. People want to get away from the daily, mechanistic way of life, and they feel stressed. And what they do is they sit in one corner and they stop thinking and try to get rid of all the ideas. And all of us can do it. I can do it. Yeah. But I negate it very strongly in light of the Quran, because the brain and mind is given to us to think. And to think, Quran guides us on that your thinking should be on positive line. That is why it says, come together to be righteous. Don't help each other in negative things or wrong things, but help each other in positive. So we can't do positive things unless we think about it. So and many times I have thought that, let me do some meditation. And then, what happens is that there is an allergy developed within me. I thought, but brain has been given to me to go forward, to do some work. Isn't it better that I do some translation work, or put some slides together, or go out for a walk, rather than and look at the signs of Allah around, which includes human beings as well. So what I mean is, it is up to us that if we find some kind of a satisfaction by doing meditation, fine. But at the end of that, we should also think that this 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of yoga, which I've done, or some other rituals which we have done, couldn't it be spent on something better? For example, reading a book, listening to a nice music, keeping myself abreast with what is going on in the world, phoning someone with the same ideology and talking to them about something important, going out for a walk in a park and doing something positive, go out and wash your car or clean the house. So what I mean is, it is up to us. It is our choice. But people do find satisfaction in meditation, which essentially means emptying their mind with all thoughts. But the problems which we are facing, those will remain the same before the meditation and after the meditation. For example, if I have a problem with my wife or with the children or with friends or at job, those are not going to go away by meditation.
Yeah.
Those are only going to go away when we address them squarely, positively, and head on using the values presented by the Quran.
Thank you very much.
So that is the way I look at it.
Thank you very much.
But what I mean is we should be creative, and all of us can devise our own methods, and through trial and errors, we will come to some conclusion ultimately that which works for us.
No, that's thank you very much once again. And another thing which I just wanted to utter, that the whole domain of psychology actually covers this aspect of consciousness and other things, which is some of the time taken parallel to that route. So with that comments, thank you very much once again.
Oh, you're welcome. I think it has been a good discussion today, our exchange. Right, if Sahar bhai, anything else?
इजाजत हो तो मैं उर्दू में बात कर लूं?
Please go ahead.
It's okay. Brother Lionel, we will translate this for you as Salim is much more comfortable in his mother tongue. Ji, Salim bhai, carry on.
जी बहुत शुक्रिया, उम्मीद है मेरी आवाज आ रही होगी आपको। अच्छा, रूह के हवाले से जहां भी जिक्र आया है तो वो रूह ना का लफ्ज आता है, अल्लाह ताला ने रूह को अपनी तरफ मंसूब किया है। और जब रूह इंसानी का जिक्र नहीं है कुरान में, तो अल्लाह ताला की रूह में से जब इंसान को वो डिवाइन एनर्जी मिली है तो फिर उसका नाम नफ्स बन गया। कुरानी इस टर्म्स में नफ्स जो है वो इंसान के पास है, तो नफ्स ही को जो हम कहते हैं कि ये सेल्फ का नाम देते हैं, खुदी का नाम देते हैं, या ह्यूमन पर्सनैलिटी का नाम देते हैं, तो कुरान में इसके लिए टर्म नफ्स है। और रूह जो है ये रूह का जो निस्बत है, अल्लाह ताला ने इसको अपनी तरफ से इसलिए किया है कि ये जो मटेरियल प्रोसेस है उसका नतीजा नहीं है, अक्ल का नतीजा भी नहीं है, और जो मादी जो एक असबाबो इलल का जो एक प्रोसेस है उसके नतीजे के तौर पर नहीं है। जैसे वसीम भाई कह रहे थे कि इसका ताल्लुक आलम अम्र से है, तो ये जो लाइफ है ये तो मटेरियलिस्टिक कंसेप्ट ऑफ लाइफ जो है, जो बायोलॉजी का है, तो उसके जरिए से एक इवॉल्व हुई है, इवोल्यूशन के जरिए से लाइफ पैदा हुई है, तो वो एक मटेरियलिस्टिक कंसेप्ट ऑफ लाइफ है। और जो रूह का जो ताल्लुक है उसका ताल्लुक मटेरियलिस्टिक कंसेप्ट ऑफ लाइफ से नहीं है, उससे बिल्कुल मुख्तलिफ है। तो ये जो हमें रूह मिलती है, रूह में से जो हमें हमारा नफ्स बनता है, ये अनडेवलप्ड मिलता है। जैसा कि डॉक्टर ERasool साहब ने इसको तफसील से बयान किया है कि इसको हमने खुद ही डेवलप करना होता है। तो अनडेवलप्ड नफ्स जो है वो बिल्कुल कुछ भी नहीं होता जब तक वो डेवलप ना हो सके। और रूह जो है ये वही को भी कहा गया है कुरान में, और खुद कुरान के लिए भी रूह का लफ्ज आया है, क्योंकि हम अपने नफ्स को, ह्यूमन पर्सनैलिटी को, अपने इनर सेल्फ को डेवलप करते हैं कुरान की वैल्यूज के मुताबिक, तो इसलिए कुरान भी रूह है और वही को भी रूह कहा गया। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Excellent. No, that is excellent, brother. Saleem's interference is always brilliant, like Wasim and others. That point is very valid because when Ruh is used, this is for Brother Lionel. I'll just go through the salient points which are pointed by Brother Saleem's point. First is that Ruh is from Allah. And one thing we should be very clear that Ruh is not part of Allah himself. Though it can, sometimes people can think like that, like mystics or in Sufis, they think that Ruh is part of Allah, and since we got that Ruh, somehow we go back to him after death. That is not right. Self is a complete entity in itself. Once I have become that, I am complete in itself, I am undivisible. I cannot be subdivided. Second point is very important because it is not part of Allah's personality or his Ruh, because his Ruh is fully developed. He is fully developed. So each part of him, if we assume that we can take out a part, will also be fully developed, which means that if anyone gets that, they will have a fully developed personality, and that is impossible. So Allah is a complete entity, being, whatever way we want to look at it. We can only relate it to our own self, nothing else. That is the only way to understand these things. So what Quran has said is that this divine energy, which is given to us, Ruh, is given us in raw form. It gives us that I. It makes us a different human being, a different entity than animals. There is no doubt in that. We know it. And we get choice and intent. And we also get a sense of identity, which is called I. Another important aspect is that this brain of ours, and the neurologists and philosophers, and they are still struggling, and they will always struggle unless they come to the Quran to understand it, that how the nervous system or our brain is producing these thoughts. And then the further complication they find is that thinking about thinking, metacognitive ability, how do we get that? So that is another aspect which we should think about it, and we can exchange views on that as well. Next he said is that this Ruh is in the domain of Amr, as Brother Wasim also said, that there is a higher level, non-khalaq, non-creative word of Allah where he makes his decisions. We don't know about it, but Quran refers to that over there he creates laws, and those laws are become understandable and discovered once they come into the domain of creation. For example, water flows, water is liquid. Why water is liquid, we don't know, because Allah had decided it in his domain of Amr that water will be liquid. Water will freeze at 4 degrees centigrade. Water will evaporate at 100 degrees centigrade, for example. Or fire will give heat. So all these are laws which Allah made in his domain of Amr. In his domain of Amr, he also decided that he will create human beings who will be men and women equal at a self's level, but they have different roles. Why did he create like that? Quran says you can't question him. To better start living with what you have and move forward and try to understand that what is our purpose. And then Quran does help. Quran, in fact, we have only looked at very small number of verses, and we have seen that how it has expanded our vision, our outlook, how much insight it has provided us. So that is very important, that we should not get impatient and keep progressing and see what Quran throws at us, and how much more we discover through the Quran in terms of our own psyche. And that psyche which is going to establish the system of deen, not that psyche which will live like animals, eat, drink, produce few children, and then die. Next point was that Ruh is not materialistic. It has become clear as well because it's not visible. It's divine energy, and energy is not visible. So that is a fact. Another important point which we should, and of course, then Saleem Bhai said that we get it in undeveloped form, on which we have gone through many times. It's good to remind ourselves that we get an undeveloped form, a raw form, and then we have to develop it using the Quranic guidance.